I want you to imagine this scenario for a second. You are just standing in your kitchen. It is completely, totally quiet. I mean, the only sound is just that low, steady hum of the refrigerator.
Oh, I love that quiet. It's so rare.
Right, it is. But you are holding your phone in your hand, and your thumb is just sort of hovering over a button on the screen that says cancel reservation, or maybe it says decline offer, or even end subscription. And the crazy part is, like 10 minutes ago, you were totally fine.
Totally at peace.
Exactly. You were confident in your life choices. You were excited about this upcoming trip or, a new job or relationship. But then you made the mistake of opening a social media app.
Ah, there it is, the fatal flaw.
Yeah, and you watched this 60-second video by a total stranger, and the stranger's just, sitting in their car, but they were speaking with this absolute terrifying certainty about the energy of the current week, or the hidden dangers of your exact career path, or these supposed red flags you're completely ignoring in your life.
Just absolute authority from a stranger in a parked car.
Literally a parked car. And in the span of just 60 seconds, your chest tightens, your breathing goes super shallow, and suddenly you are completely ready to dismantle a massive piece of your reality just because a voice you didn't even consciously invite into your life they staged a coup in your brain.
It is wild when you lay it out like that.
It sounds totally insane when we say it out loud, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you are being really honest with yourself right now, you have probably lived a version of that exact kitchen scenario this very week.
Oh, absolutely. It is such a profoundly modern dilemma. And I want to say welcome back, everyone, to Vibrations and Manifestations. This is session 139 of our deep dive.
Yes, welcome back. I'm Jared.
And I'm Alicia. And if you joined us for our previous session, session 138, we spent a lot of time mapping out this crucial difference between static and signal. We talked about information overload and, navigating the really intense energetic threshold of this July. We even introduced the one brave action rule to help regulate your nervous system when the world just feels overwhelmingly loud.
Which it definitely does lately.
Exactly. So we really laid the foundation for finding your own inner signal in that session.
But, and this is a big but, finding your signal is really only half the battle.
Yeah.
Because once you actually find it, you have to protect it. I mean, you have to figure out who and what actually gets permission to shape that signal moving forward.
Right. Who gets access?
Yes. So today's deep dive is entirely dedicated to this art of discernment. We're looking at it as conscious influence selection. We're really exploring this concept that we call the signal council. Basically, who gets a seat at the table of your reality.
Because the hard truth is, not every voice deserves a seat at your table. Even if that voice belongs to someone who deeply loves you.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
It is. And even if that voice is incredibly popular online, or even if it sounds super spiritual or urgent or just highly emotionally intense, we want to spend this session giving you practical, interactive workshop-style tools to help you stop outsourcing your agency. We want you to reclaim the sovereign territory of your own mind.
I love that, the sovereign territory of your mind. But before we get into the heavy lifting of the workshops and the tools, I really feel like I have to share a slightly embarrassing but very, very real personal story about how sneaky this can be.
Oh, please do. We love the embarrassing stories.
I mean, it's just to show you that literally no one is immune to this stuff.
Yeah.
So, a few months ago, I decided I wanted to upgrade my morning routine. Nothing crazy, just waking up a little bit earlier, drinking some water first thing, maybe doing like a 5-minute stretch before I look at my phone.
Very reasonable goals.
Right. Totally reasonable. So I started watching a few videos from this incredibly aesthetic, highly optimized wellness creator online. And at first, it was great. I got a genuinely nice tip about adding a pinch of sea salt to my lemon water.
Uh-oh. I can already hear exactly where this is going. You fell down the aesthetic wellness rabbit hole.
Oh, it is an absolute vortex. So, fast forward 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks. And I am standing in the aisle of this overpriced specialty grocery store. I am holding a $40 jar of adaptogenic mushroom powder that I literally cannot pronounce.
Of course you are.
And I am feeling this deep, crushing, existential wave of shame because I haven't done an ice bath that morning.
An ice bath?
I don't even own a tub. But I was literally judging my entire worth as a human being based on a metric designed by a 22-year-old on the internet. Someone who doesn't know my life, doesn't know my schedule or my body or my responsibilities. I had completely voluntarily handed over the keys to my internal validation to a total stranger.
That is just the most perfect illustration of what we call influence creep. I mean, it is a silent, almost invisible takeover.
Influence creep. Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like.
Right, because influence creep happens when voices that you never consciously vetted or voices you never consciously chose to lead you just slowly install themselves as your ultimate inner authority. And the thing is, it never happens with a grand announcement.
No, there's no warning label.
Exactly. It is completely incremental. It is micro interaction by micro interaction.
It really is. You follow someone for a quick tip on, like, organizing your inbox, and then 6 months later, their specific anxious tone of voice is the exact voice you hear in your head when you're trying to negotiate a raise at work.
Or even think about the news media, right? You might start following a particular political commentator or maybe a dramatic news account simply because you want to be an informed citizen. And that is a noble goal.
Totally. We should be informed.
But over time, their permanent state of five-alarm fire urgency just becomes your default emotional weather report. You start waking up feeling braced for impact every single day. You feel defensive, and it's not because anything dangerous is actually happening in your immediate physical environment, but because you have fully inherited their baseline anxiety.
You just download their panic.
Oh.
And it isn't even just strangers on the internet doing this. This happens so frequently with the people we actually know and love.
Oh, heavily.
Like, you might have a friend who is naturally very cynical. Yeah. And they wear it like a badge of honor, right? They call themselves a realist. And because you spend so much time with them, and because you value the friendship, you slowly start mistaking their deep cynicism for actual realism.
Wow, yes. That distinction gets blurred so fast.
It really does.
Yeah.
So you have this beautiful, optimistic, slightly vulnerable idea for a new creative project. And before you even share it with them, before the words even leave your mouth, you shoot it down in your own mind using their voice. Their voice is just crept right into your own internal logic.
And that's the danger. When influence creep really takes hold, we lose the ability to distinguish our own baseline truth from the inherited anxiety or urgency or cynicism of our inputs. And we have to recognize that there is a very real biological mechanism driving this.
Right. It's not just a mindset issue.
Exactly. We often talk about this stuff as if it's just floating in the ether of the mind, but this is a deeply physiological process.
Yeah.
Human beings are profoundly porous creatures. We are not sealed containers.
No, we leak all over each other.
We do. We possess these social nervous systems that are quite literally designed to catch the emotional weather of the people around us.
It's emotional contagion. I always think of it like catching a cold, but instead of a virus, you're just catching a mood.
That's a great way to put it. From a biological standpoint, when we interact with someone, and this is whether it's in person over coffee or just through a screen, we don't just passively listen to their words. Our brains utilize mirror neurons to unconsciously mimic their posture, their vocal tone, their breathing rate, and even their micro expressions.
We physically mirror them without knowing it.
Yes. And here's the truly fascinating part. Through that physical mimicry, we actually adopt the corresponding emotional state.
Wait, really? The physical mimicry creates the emotion?
Exactly. So if you watch a video of someone speaking really rapidly and they have a tight jaw and wide, stressed eyes, your nervous system simulates those physical cues. Then your brain receives the data from your own simulated tension and says, oh, wow, we are tense. There must be a threat nearby. And suddenly your heart rate elevates. Cortisol begins to just drip right into your bloodstream.
So my body is generating an actual physical stress response to a threat that literally only exists in the content creator's mind.
Yes. And when you compound this physiological response with our evolutionary wiring, it becomes a massively powerful trap. Think about it. When human beings face uncertainty, our ancient brain architecture compels us to scan the tribe for cues.
Like looking around to see if everyone else is panicking.
Precisely. If you are standing in a forest and the 10 people around you suddenly look terrified and start sprinting in the opposite direction, your brain does not waste time analyzing the wind direction or trying to spot the predator in the bushes. It bypasses the logical prefrontal cortex entirely, activates the amygdala, and just makes you run.
Which, I mean, that kept us alive for millennia. That's a good feature to have in a forest.
It is brilliant if there is an actual saber-toothed tiger, but it is completely disastrous when the tribe is a global digital network that is actively optimized to prioritize fear and outrage for the sake of engagement.
Right. It creates this massive distortion field.
Exactly. In digital echo chambers, if enough people act like a particular situation, maybe a market fluctuation or a celestial event or a political speech is a catastrophic emergency, your ancient brain mistakes that collective intensity for factual evidence of a physical threat.
So the crowd is meant to alert us, but we've let it start authoring us. We absolutely cannot let the collective panic write the narrative of our individual lives without our explicit conscious consent.
And we see this amplification, this total hijacking of our agency most intensely during moments of collective uncertainty, moments when everyone is trying to predict the future.
Oh, the prediction markets.
Right. Which brings us perfectly to the really incredible case study of July 2026.
Yes, the July threshold. Now, I really want to preface this by saying that whether you personally follow astrology closely, or whether you think it's just interesting mythology, or even if you pay absolutely no attention to it at all, please lean in right now.
Lean in, because this is universal.
Exactly, because the way humanity engages with astrology is honestly one of those perfect, transparent lenses into how we process competing interpretations of reality.
Because the data in the sky is identical for everyone on Earth. The planets are where they are. But the interpretations of that data are wildly, dizzyingly divergent.
Yes. So let me set the scene for this, because this literally happened to me just a few weeks ago. The astrological community has been super hyper-focused on this specific month for years. I mean, the celestial mechanics are undeniably complex. First, you have this highly volatile Mars-Uranus conjunction happening right around July 4th, which also ties into the United States' semi-quincentennial birthday.
Right. And for those listening who aren't familiar with the archetypes, Mars represents action, aggression, and drive, while Uranus represents sudden change, revolution, and shock. So putting them together is very often likened to putting a spark right next to a stick of dynamite.
Right. It is highly, highly activating. But then, layered on top of all that, you have Mercury, the planet of communication, logistics going retrograde in the deeply emotional sign of Cancer.
Oh, the feelings.
All the feelings. Plus, you have Jupiter, the planet of expansion, entering the bold, performative sign of Leo. And, as if that wasn't enough, you have this rare configuration called a barball basket, which essentially means all the major planetary bodies are clustered together in one really small slice of the sky. So they're acting like a concentrated laser beam of collective energy rather than being spread out evenly around the wheel.
It is a tremendous amount of celestial data to process all at once.
It is. So me being me, I decided I wanted to be prepared.
Famous last words.
Truly. I sat down on my living room floor one evening, I made myself a nice cup of tea, and I decided to listen to 3 different forecasts from 3 very well-respected astrologers. And this is where what I call the 3 forecast problem completely shattered my peace.
Okay, walk us through exactly what happened in your body with each forecast. Break it down.
Okay, so the first forecast I listened to was highly analytical, very focused heavily on mundane astrology, which is the astrology of world events and politics. And this astrologer framed July as opening on profoundly unstable ground. They really emphasized that Mars-Uranus spark, predicting severe technological disruptions, sudden logistical gridlock, and just major geopolitical volatility.
Okay, and how did your body react?
Within 10 minutes of listening, my shoulders were literally up around my ears. My jaw was clenched so tight my teeth hurt. I found myself mentally calculating exactly how much cash I had in the bank. I was debating whether I should just cancel my summer travel plans altogether, and I was genuinely wondering if I needed to go stockpile groceries.
Because your nervous system absorbed their specific interpretation as an instruction to prepare for battle.
Yes. My body interpreted the forecast as a literal physical threat. I was in a pure state of defensive bracing.
Right.
But then, I took a breath and I turned on the second podcast. Now, this astrologer looked at the exact same planets, the exact same mathematical degrees, but framed it entirely differently. They focused mostly on the Jupiter in Leo expansion and the concentrated focused energy of the barball basket.
Okay, so a totally different lens.
Totally. They called this month a miraculous, unprecedented collective reflowering. They said it was a time of spiritual breakthrough where bold leaps of faith would be wildly rewarded.
Wow, a completely different energetic architecture.
Completely. And suddenly my bracing felt all wrong. I felt this massive surge of restless, almost reckless energy right in my chest. I suddenly wanted to quit my stable projects, empty my savings account, start a massive new business venture, and just leap into the void.
Oh my gosh. So the interpretation became an instruction to just abandon all caution.
Yes. Complete energetic whiplash.
And what about the third forecast?
Well, the third was focused purely on the psychological realm. They zeroed in on the Mercury retrograde in Cancer. And they framed this entire month as a required, non-negotiable period of deep, painful, emotional excavation. They said we needed to withdraw, to stop striving entirely, to examine all our childhood wounds, and to just sit in absolute stillness.
Heavy.
So heavy. By the time that one finished, I felt a heavy, sinking feeling right in my stomach. I felt a sudden, crushing pressure to go book a silent retreat. And honestly, I felt like a massive spiritual failure because part of me just wanted to go to the office and have a normal, productive Tuesday.
And this right here, this is the crux of the issue. The profound insight from your living room floor experiment is that a forecast, literally any forecast, whether it's astrological or a financial market prediction or a political pundit's dire warning on the news, is never, ever neutral once it enters your physical body.
No, it instantly mutates.
Exactly. It ceases to be data and instantly becomes a behavioral suggestion.
It totally hijacked me. I realized the problem wasn't trying to figure out which of the three astrologers was objectively right. The problem was that each interpretation made me want to become a slightly different version of myself.
Right.
I mean, I was oscillating between the fearful prepper, the reckless visionary, and the reclusive mystic in the span of an hour. I was completely outsourcing my identity and my agency to the interpreters.
Which is exactly why we so desperately need a framework for consuming predictive advice. I mean, when we are faced with loud, confident voices interpreting the future, we need a sorting mechanism so they do not hijack our agency. And we utilize a really powerful four-part matrix for this.
Yes, let's get into the matrix.
Whenever you hear a prediction of any kind, you must actively categorize it into one of four buckets, and those buckets are mirror, weather, mandate, or myth.
Mirror, weather, mandate, myth. I want to spend some real time on this because this framework honestly changed how I consume media entirely. Let's start with the mirror.
Okay, so using advice or an interpretation as a mirror is a highly healthy, very generative approach. When you hear a forecast, instead of adopting it as a concrete reality that is definitely going to happen to you, you use it to reflect on your own internal subjective state.
Right. So in the case of that third astrologer who talked about deep emotional excavation and communication breakdowns, treating it as a mirror means I don't panic and assume everyone in my life is going to betray me this month.
No, that would be outsourcing.
Exactly. Instead, I say, this theme of strained communication is interesting. Let me use this as a prompt. Where does communication feel strained in my own life right now? Where am I withholding my truth? The forecast just becomes a journaling prompt for self-discovery.
Exactly. It returns the power directly to you. You are the one doing the work. The forecast is just the flashlight illuminating the work. Now, the second category is weather. And this is also a deeply healthy use of predictive information. Weather is about pragmatic preparation, not existential panic.
It is exactly like checking the weather app on your phone. Like if the app tells you there's an 80% chance of torrential rain and high winds this afternoon, what is the sane response?
You grab an umbrella.
You grab an umbrella, you wear waterproof boots, maybe you leave for your appointment 15 minutes early so you don't have to speed on slick roads. What you absolutely do not do is cancel your entire life, board up the windows of your house, and hide under your bed weeping because the app ordered you to suffer.
That is the perfect analogy. In our astrological case study, if a forecast predicts the Mars-Uranus transit will create a highly reactive, volatile week collectively, treating it as weather means saying, okay, the energetic weather is stormy out there, people might be driving a little faster, emails might be a little terser, so I will leave extra space in my schedule. I will take 2 deep breaths before responding to an aggravating text message. I will pack my energetic umbrella.
It just helps you navigate the environment with grace, but it absolutely does not control your destiny.
Exactly. Which brings us to the danger zone, the third category, mandate.
The mandate.
Mandate is the profoundly unhealthy use of advice. This is where influence creep fully metastasizes and just takes over your life. This is when an interpretation tells you what you unequivocally must do, and you obey it blindly, completely bypassing your own inner knowing.
Like saying, Mercury is retrograde, therefore I am fundamentally forbidden from signing this lease. Or, I must delay my product launch even though my business really needs the momentum right now. Or, I cannot have this important conversation with my partner.
Right.
When you treat a forecast as a mandate, you have completely abdicated the throne of your own life. You have literally handed your sovereign power over to the sky, or let's be honest, more accurately, to a human being with a microphone who is interpreting the sky.
It is the ultimate avoidance of responsibility. You're making them the parent and you the child.
Yes.
And finally, we have myth. And this is a beautiful, expansive, and very healthy way to engage with grand narratives. Engaging with myth involves using symbolic language and archetypes to understand a larger cultural or personal moment without pretending you can control the entire plot of the universe.
Right. So hearing about a rare planetary alignment, like that barbalt basket, and saying, oh, This helps me understand the overarching archetypal story of transformation and disruption that humanity is moving through right now. It gives me a poetic vocabulary for the chaos I feel in the world.
Exactly. It offers profound meaning and context, but it doesn't demand that you personally solve the global economy before lunch.
That's such a relief. So the core lesson of the mirror, weather, mandate, myth matrix is basically this. A healthy interpretation should always, always return you to active participation in your own life.
Always. It should make you feel more grounded, more curious, and more capable. Any interpretation becomes harmful the exact moment it replaces your active participation with blind, fearful obedience.
Well, knowing that intellectually is one thing. Actually stopping it from happening when the world is practically screaming at you is another. If we agree that we cannot let every loud voice or every algorithmically boosted panic or even every well-meaning friend become a mandate for our lives, how do we actively curate who gets to give us advice?
That's the real work.
Right? Because we shouldn't live in total isolation.
Yeah.
We need community.
Yeah.
But we absolutely cannot live in that crowded, noisy kitchen of overlapping voices anymore.
And this is where we have to cross the bridge from theory into architecture. We must actively, consciously build your signal council.
The Signal Council. I love how that sounds. It sounds incredibly official.
It absolutely needs to be official because right now most people are operating their inner lives like a chaotic town hall meeting where literally anyone off the street can just walk up to the microphone and demand a change in policy.
So true.
To understand the necessity of the Signal Council, let's use a scenario I experienced a few years ago. Let's think about the family dinner table.
Oh, the family dinner table. The ultimate proving ground for personal boundaries.
Indeed it is. So a few years ago, I was navigating a pretty major career transition. I was deciding whether to leave a very safe, very lucrative corporate position to start my own private practice. And I was sitting at a large holiday dinner with my extended family. I was feeling a bit vulnerable. And I made the critical error of asking the entire table for their advice.
Oh no, you threw the raw meat right into the enclosure.
I really did. And the chaos was instantaneous. I mean, one relative who has always been deeply risk-averse and super cynical about the economy, immediately told me I was out of my mind, that the market was a complete scam and I would bankrupt my family.
Ouch, right.
Right. Then another relative, who is wonderfully spiritual but entirely ungrounded, asked me if the aura of my new office space was properly aligned with my sacral chakra.
I mean, valid question, but maybe not the priority right now.
Exactly. Then a third relative started projecting their own completely unresolved financial traumas onto me, literally hyperventilating over the mashed potatoes about tax brackets. And a fourth relative, who just really likes to be in control of everything, started telling me exactly how to design my logo before I'd even registered the business name.
10 minutes of that.
Yeah.
And your nervous system must have been completely fried. I mean, you probably felt way more confused than before you even asked.
I was entirely paralyzed. But sitting there, just listening to the absolute cacophony, I had a very profound realization. I realized I was not confused because I lacked wisdom or because the decision was actually impossible. I was confused because I was letting every single person at that table vote on my life with equal weight.
Wow. That is such a massive realization. Not everyone who loves you belongs in your decision-making council.
And that is the hardest truth to integrate. It honestly feels almost cruel to say it out loud sometimes. We are so deeply conditioned to believe that if someone loves us, they automatically have a right to shape us.
Right. Like their love buys them a ticket to the boardroom.
But that is a total fallacy. Love and influence are not the same metric. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. Love and influence are not the same metric. Someone can care for you with the absolute entirety of their being, but utterly lack the emotional regulation, the life context, the domain expertise, or the specific wisdom required to help you make a sound decision in a particular area of your life.
Love and influence are not the same metric.
Yeah.
We all really need to let that sink in.
Yeah.
Just because they love you does not mean they get to lead you.
Exactly. So if we are clearing the boardroom, right? If we are lovingly but firmly ushering the panicked relatives, the cynical friends, and the loud internet gurus out the heavy oak doors, who actually gets a seat? We teach that there are 4 specific required seats at your inner table. This is your core signal council. And seat 1 belongs exclusively to the body.
The body. I want us to really dissect this one because the wellness space constantly throws around the phrase, just listen to your body. And honestly, that can be incredibly confusing and sometimes even counterproductive.
It can be wildly confusing if you don't understand the nuance of it. The reason the body gets the very first seat at the table is because the body is an impeccable, totally unbiased reporter of raw sensation. The logical brain will lie to you all day long.
Oh, absolutely. The brain is a master rationalizer.
Exactly. The brain will rationalize staying in a highly toxic job because of the 401k match. The brain will convince you to stay in a deeply draining relationship just because you don't want to deal with being alone. But the body does not rationalize, it just reacts.
So it's just gathering raw somatic data.
Yes. When you consider an option, say taking a cross-country move, you tune into the physical response. Does your chest suddenly feel tight and constricted? Does your breathing become shallow, sort of moving up into your collarbones? Does your stomach clench? Or, conversely, do your shoulders drop away from your ears? Is there a subtle sense of expansion in your rib cage? Does your breathing deepen down into your belly?
The body is essentially the ultimate lie detector.
It is, but, and this is a massive, critical but that most people completely miss, the body reports. It does not command. It does not get absolute veto power all on its own.
Wait, really? Because I feel like I've always been taught that if my body is screaming, if I have a visceral reaction, I should instantly stop whatever I'm doing.
You must listen to the report with deep reverence, yes, but you must contextualize the data. Why? Because the body is also an archive. It carries old, outdated fears. It carries the somatic memory of past traumas.
That makes sense.
Let's look at an example. Let's say you are an artist and you're about to step onto a stage to share your original work with a large audience for the very first time. Is your ultimate dream. But as you walk toward the curtain, your body might report extreme blinding terror. Your palms are sweating, your heart is racing, your stomach is in knots. The body is literally screaming, "Run away, this is a life or death threat to our survival."
Right, because biologically, standing alone in front of a staring crowd used to mean you were about to be exiled from the tribe and eaten by a predator.
Exactly. So if the body was the sole dictator of your signal council, you would never, ever walk onto that stage. You would flee the theater every time. You would never grow. So the body's report of fear must be heard, it must be honored, and it must be regulated. But it doesn't get to solely dictate the action. We have to learn to discern between the body's signal of a true threat versus the body's signal of expansion into the unknown.
That distinction is life-changing. Fear of a threat versus fear of growth. Okay, so if the body only reports, who sits right next to the body to balance that somatic data out?
Seat 2 belongs to the evidence.
The evidence. This feels very grounding already.
It is the ultimate grounding wire. The evidence seat deals purely in facts, receipts, historical data, reality, calendars, and bank statements. This seat is so crucial because it acts as the counterweight to pure emotional impulse. It prevents you from floating off into a vague, ungrounded fantasy where you just try to manifest solutions without actually interacting with physical reality.
Okay, give me an example of the evidence seat in action.
Let's say your body seat is feeling incredibly expansive and excited about a sudden wild urge to quit your job, buy a vintage van, and travel the country. The body says, yes, freedom, expansion, let's go. But the evidence seat opens up a literal folder, places it on the table, and calmly points out that you currently have $400 in your checking account, you have a dependent who needs monthly health insurance, and you have literally never been camping in your life.
Ouch. The evidence seat is a bit of a buzzkill, but a very necessary one. I guess in that scenario, the evidence seat wins the round. It provides the necessary friction to keep you safe.
Precisely. We need that friction. We can't build a life on vibes alone. So seat 3 belongs to the wise witness.
I just love the title of this seat. Who qualifies as a wise witness?
This is a highly, highly selective role. This could be a trusted mentor. It could be a deeply trained therapist, maybe a respected elder in your community, or a profoundly grounded friend. But there's a very specific, absolute, non-negotiable qualifying criterion for this seat.
What is it?
The wise witness does not need you to panic in order for them to feel important.
Ugh. I want everyone listening to just take a breath and let that sink in. They do not need you to panic for them to feel important. Honestly, that eliminates about 80% of the people we usually go to for advice.
It absolutely does,
Yeah.
because so many people often unconsciously bond through mutual anxiety. We call it trauma bonding or spiral bonding.
Spiral bonding. That is so accurate.
Right. If you have a friend who only feels close to you, or who only feels useful to the relationship when you are both complaining or spiraling or aggressively dissecting a crisis, they are not a wise witness. They are an accomplice to your anxiety.
So what does a true wise witness actually do when you go to them?
A true wise witness acts as a flawless mirror. They help you become more yourself. When you bring them a problem, they don't immediately dump their own opinions or their own unhealed fears onto you. They ask expansive questions that clarify your own thinking. Because their ultimate goal is not to make you dependent on their brilliant advice. Their goal is to foster your absolute independence. They want you to eventually outgrow the need to ask them.
That is really beautiful. They just hold the space for your sovereignty. All right, so we have the body gathering somatic data, we have the evidence grounding us in reality, and the wise witness providing clear reflection. Who holds the fourth and final seat?
Seat 4 belongs to the future self.
The version of me who actually has to live with the consequences of the decision?
Exactly. The version of you who is waiting 5, 10, 20 years down the road, they are the one who inherits the life you are actively building today, long after the emotional weather of the current moment has passed. And this seat is rooted in a really profound psychological reality, this core idea of self-efficacy.
Let's unpack that, because self-efficacy is a massive pillar of manifestation in creating your reality.
Fundamentally, self-efficacy is the core, unshakable belief in your own capability to organize and execute the actions required to manage future situations. In simpler terms, it is your deep-seated belief that you have agency. It's the belief that no matter what happens, you can handle it. It is the exact opposite of helplessness. So how does installing the future self seat actively build that self-efficacy in our daily decision-making?
Think about what happens when you rely on a poorly constructed inner counsel one filled with the panicked algorithm, the anxious friends, the loud internet gurus. Every single time you obey a mandate out of fear, you strip away a piece of your own self-efficacy. You are sending a subconscious message to your own brain that says, I am small, I am incapable, and I am entirely dependent on these external experts to keep me safe.
You literally erode your own trust in yourself.
Precisely. But by consciously installing the future self in the final seat, you shift the entire paradigm. When you're facing a hard choice, you ask the future self, which option preserves my agency? Which decision will the me of 5 years from now look back on and feel proud of because it was made with courage, self-trust, and integrity rather than fear? A properly constructed signal counsel preserves and amplifies your self-efficacy every time you use it. I want to make this really practical for our listeners. Let's look at the real-world friction. What happens when the council members vehemently disagree with each other? Let's say I am offered a major promotion at work. The evidence seat slaps the spreadsheet on the table and says, look at these facts. The salary is double. The benefits are incredible. This solves all our financial goals for the next 5 years. But seat 1, my body, is screaming resounding no. My throat is tight. My stomach is in knots. I feel sheer dread every time I think about the office. Who breaks the tie?
This is exactly why the council exists as a dynamic group rather than just one single dictator. In that specific scenario, the wise witness and the future self step in to mediate the conflict between body and evidence.
How does that look?
The council turns to the body first. The wise witness might say, thank you for reporting this anxiety. We hear the dread. We completely validate it. And then they gently interrogate it. They ask, body, are you reporting dread because this new company has a truly toxic culture and represents a genuine threat to our well-being? Or are you reporting dread because stepping into this larger leadership role triggers our old, unhealed childhood wound of being visible and getting criticized?
Oh, wow. So we really parse out the data. We figure out if the body is giving a signal of current, present moment danger, or if it's just echoing a memory of past pain.
Exactly. If the investigation reveals it is an echo of an old fear of visibility, the fear is acknowledged, but the evidence and the future self are allowed to lead the action. The future self steps up and says, I know we are terrified to be seen. I completely honor that fear, but I want to be the version of us who learned how to lead and took the risk anyway. The body's report is integrated. It isn't shamed or ignored, but it is overridden by a higher conscious value.
It stops the paralysis. It brings so much compassion into the decision-making process instead of just forcing yourself through it. Okay, so we have our 4 beautiful seats. The room is set. But before we begin the actual workshops, I think we need to explicitly list the voices that do not get a vote, the entities that must be physically barred from the council chamber.
It is just as important to know who to ruthlessly exclude as who to lovingly include.
I have a few immediate nominees for exclusion. First off, the algorithm. The algorithm absolutely does not get a vote in my life. It does not care about my self-efficacy. It only cares about my watch time and ad revenue.
Agreed. The algorithm is optimizing for engagement, and fear and outrage are the most highly engaging emotions. It belongs outside the heavy oak doors.
Oh, the ex. You know the one. The ex-partner or maybe the highly critical former boss who still lives completely rent-free in your nervous system. The ghost voice that chimes in when you are trying something new and says, "You'll never finish that project. You always quit when things get hard. Out. No vote for you."
The friend who only bonds through panic, as we discussed earlier. You can love them, you can have coffee with them, but they absolutely cannot legislate the policies of your life.
What about the internet influencer or the coach who literally profits off my feeling of being behind?
Mm.
The one whose entire marketing strategy is explicitly designed to make me feel like if I don't buy their specific system right now, I will miss the energetic portal and fail at life.
Huh.
Out. And finally, my absolute favorite entity to banish. The tiny tyrant version of yourself who just hasn't eaten lunch or slept enough yet.
A very real, very loud voice. Physiological depletion constantly masquerades as existential dread. When that voice speaks up, you give it a sandwich and a nap, but you absolutely do not give it a vote on whether you should end your marriage or quit your career.
Definitely not. Okay, it is time to move from theory into practice. We are going to enter the workshop portion of this deep dive. I want you to make sure you have some mental space right now, or maybe even pull out a journal if you are somewhere safe to do so. We're going to utilize what we call the Discernment Toolkit to actively debug your reality. And the first tool in this kit is the Influence Audit.
The influence audit is designed to make the invisible power dynamics in your life suddenly very visible.
We are going to do this in real time. I want you to think of 5 specific voices that are currently influencing you heavily. Right now, just bring them to mind. This could be a podcast you listen to religiously, a specific friend you always text when you are stressed out, a family member, a spiritual teacher, or even a recurring inner narrative. I'm going to give you a few seconds to just lock in those 5 voices.
Yeah, just take a breath, really picture their faces or hear their voices. Get 5 of them.
Okay, you have your voices. Now we are going to run them through the diagnostic questions. And you have to be brutally honest with yourself here. Think of the first voice on your list. After engaging with this person or this content, do you feel more capable or do you feel more behind?
Just notice the somatic response in your body when you ask that. If a voice consistently leaves you feeling like you are failing or that you are fundamentally flawed, they are actively diminishing your self-efficacy.
Second question. Think of the next voice on your list. When you are around them or consuming their words, do you feel more grounded in your authentic self or do you feel performative? Do you feel like you have to adopt their worldview just to earn their approval?
Right, because a true council member never, ever demands that you shrink or perform to belong.
Third question. Does this voice respect your agency? When you disagree with them, do they honor your differing path or do they demand obedience and try to instill fear if you walk away?
These are tough questions. And once you have run the voices through the diagnostic, you must ruthlessly sort them into 3 buckets. Bucket 1 is the council seat. These are the rare, deeply trusted voices that elevate your self-efficacy. They have earned their influence. Bucket 2 is consult occasionally. These voices are useful. Maybe they offer great technical advice on a specific topic, but they are not central to your life's meaning. You don't ask them for existential advice. And bucket 3 is outside the room. These voices drain you, trigger you, or demand compliance. They have 0 voting power starting today.
Doing that audit honestly clears so much static.
Yeah.
But I mean, what happens when the static pierces through anyway? What happens when a dramatic prediction or an intense piece of uninvited advice hits you out of nowhere? This brings us to the second tool, the 24-hour interpretation rule.
This is a critical behavioral circuit breaker. The rule is absolute. When you receive a dramatic prediction, an urgent piece of advice, or a terrifying forecast, you must wait a minimum of 24 hours before taking any action or integrating it as truth.
Why specifically 24 hours? Let's talk about the biology of the pause, because it's not just an arbitrary number.
We enforce this rule because of the biological half-life of stress hormones. When you hear something shocking or terrifying, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, fires instantly. It completely floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. You are immediately thrown into a fight-or-flight state. And when your brain is drenched in cortisol, it literally restricts blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, which is the area responsible for logic, long-term planning, and nuanced discernment. You biologically cannot make a wise, grounded decision when you are in acute arousal. The 24-hour window forces a pause. It allows your liver to process the cortisol out of your bloodstream. It allows the prefrontal cortex to finally come back online.
It is the digestion period. So during those 24 hours while the cortisol is clearing, what should we actually be doing? Because I don't want to just sit on the couch staring at the wall in a panic.
You don't just sit there. You actively test the durability of the advice by asking grounding questions. You ask, what remains true after I get 8 hours of sleep? Because terrors that seem completely insurmountable at 2 a.m. very often look flimsy and ridiculous in the morning light. You ask, what remains true after I eat a nourishing meal and stabilize my blood sugar?
And my absolute favorite test. What remains true when I imagine explaining this dramatic advice out loud to my wise witness?
Yes, there is incredible power in vocalization. Imagine sitting across from your most grounded, practical mentor and saying, I am going to empty my retirement account and move to the desert tomorrow because an internet astrologer told me the barbell basket requires it. Simply imagining saying it out loud to a sane person often immediately exposes the absurdity of the panic.
The core guiding principle of the 24-hour rule is this. If guidance is truly real, if it is genuinely wise, it can survive 24 hours of digestion. True wisdom never requires you to act in a frantic, cortisol-fueled panic. False, manufactured urgency is the ultimate hallmark of influence creep.
If guidance is real, it can survive digestion. That is a foundational law of discernment.
Our third tool in the toolkit is the whose voice is this? I have to admit, I use this one almost daily now. It is incredibly exposing.
It is a vital practice for identifying inherited, parasitic interpretations that we have mistakenly accepted as our own thoughts.
Here is how it works. You are just going about your normal day, and suddenly a thought pops into your head. It usually feels intensely urgent, highly critical, or deeply anxious. For example, you are writing an email and a thought screams, if this isn't phrased perfectly, they will think you are incompetent and you will lose this client. The tool is to literally freeze, take a breath, and trace the energetic origin of that exact thought. You ask yourself, who is speaking right now?
Does that voice sound like the deep, resonant tone of your grounded future self? Or does that specific phrasing, that specific flavor of anxiety sound exactly like your mother when she was stressed about money during your childhood? Does that demand for perfection sound like your hypercritical former boss? Or does it sound like the intense, hustling entrepreneur you binge-watched on YouTube last night?
It is genuinely wild how often we mistake a tape recording of someone else's unhealed trauma for our own intuition. But once you identify that the voice belongs to your anxious mother or the internet guru, it completely loses its power.
Yeah.
You can literally say, that is not my voice. That is Susan's anxiety. I don't need to carry it today.
Which leads us perfectly into the final analytical tool, manifestation debug mode. This is where we lovingly, but very firmly, call ourselves out on our own spiritual bypassing. In many self-development and manifestation circles, there's a lot of vague talk about having blocks.
Right. I just have a block around abundance, or I have a block around making this decision.
But very often, what we label a mystical block is just a profound lack of clarity, a hidden external influence we haven't audited, or a flat-out delay tactic. So we need to debug the system with 3 confronting questions.
I will ask the first debug question. Listeners, feel this one in your body. Are you calling something intuition just because you don't want to admit that it's actually an external manufactured influence?
That is a sharp, necessary question. If you say, my intuition is telling me I desperately need to buy this $5,000 coaching program, we need to pause. Is it your deep, sovereign intuition? Or is it the mathematical result of watching 40 highly targeted, algorithmically optimized video ads that utilize sophisticated psychological triggers to make you feel fundamentally inadequate without that specific program?
Ouch. That one stings, but it's so necessary. Here's the second debug question. Are you collecting more and more guidance simply because you are actively avoiding making a difficult decision?
We see this pattern constantly. A person will listen to 10 different podcasts, read 5 self-help books, consult 3 astrologers, pull a dozen tarot cards, and poll their entire friend group, all under the noble guise of gathering information and doing research. But if we are honest, it is a delay tactic. It is the outsourcing of courage. You are secretly hoping that one of those external sources will make the hard choice for you, so you don't have to bear the heavy responsibility of the outcome.
Is the dinner table pile on? But you intentionally invited everyone in on purpose, so you wouldn't have to cook the meal yourself.
Exactly. You are using data collection to avoid action. And the final debug question, Are you using the word discernment when you really just mean distrust?
Wow. Let's really explore that. What is the actual difference between discernment and distrust?
Sometimes people who have been hurt or misled in the past build their emotional walls so high that absolutely no advice can get in. They reject the evidence seat, they reject the wise witness, they isolate themselves completely, but they label this trauma response as discernment. They proudly say, I only listen to myself, I don't trust anyone. But true discernment is not isolation. It is conscious curation. If you are using discernment as a spiritual excuse to avoid intimacy, vulnerability, or constructive, necessary feedback from trusted sources, you are just operating from a wound of distrust.
Discernment is a filter on a window. It is not a concrete wall. That distinction is everything.
All right, we have audited the voices, we have established the 24-hour rule, we have debugged the blocks. To synthesize all of this, to move it from your intellectual brain into your somatic body, we are going to close the workshop portion with an immersive visualization.
This is where the structural architecture becomes a felt, lived experience.
Oh.
I want you to close your eyes, if it is safe to do so. Take a deep, slow breath in through your nose.
Yes, just settle in.
And exhale slowly. I want you to imagine a room in your mind's eye. This is your inner council chamber. It is a beautiful circular room. Notice the architecture. Maybe the walls are made of ancient stone or warm, rich wood. The lighting is soft, calm, and perfectly clear. In the center of this protected room, there is a round, sturdy table. There are 4 chairs placed evenly around it.
This space is sovereign. It is yours.
You walk into the room, and you take your place standing at the head of the table. You are the ultimate authority here. Now you invite your council members to enter. First, the doors open, and the body walks in. Watch as the body approaches the table. It doesn't shout, it doesn't panic. It simply sits down, places a hand gently over its heart, and breathes. It is ready to report the truth of your physical sensations.
Next, the evidence enters.
Evidence walks in calmly and sits down. They carry no drama, no emotion. They simply place a neat folder on the table. It contains the reality of your life, your calendar, your resources, your factual history. They are your anchor to the earth. Then the doors open for the wise witness. Picture their face clearly. It might be a mentor, a dear friend, or a figure of deep respect. They sit down and look at you with a warm, reassuring, unbothered smile. They do not need you to fail, and they do not need you to panic. They only want your clarity.
And finally, your future self takes the last chair.
The doors open, and the future self walks in. Look at them. Look at how grounded they are. They take the final seat. They look at you with profound compassion and fierce strength. They are already holding the consequences of whatever choice you're about to make, and they are not afraid. They survived it, and they thrived. Now your table is fully set, but outside the heavy locked oak doors of your chamber, you hear the noise.
The chaotic knocking begins.
There are loud, frantic knocks. It's the algorithm, shouting about a trending panic. It's a fearful relative projecting their anxiety. It's an old, inherited insecurity scraping at the wood. You hear them. You don't panic. You don't plug your ears. You simply stand tall, look at the door, and say clearly and firmly, "You may be heard out there, but you do not get a vote in here."
Feel that boundary lock into place.
The room remains perfectly calm. The noise outside is muffled. You turn back to the 4 at the table, your body, your evidence, your wise witness, your future self. You take a breath, and you ask them 3 questions. What is true? What is mine? What is next?
And in that protected, curated space, completely free from the distortion of the uninvited crowd, the answer that finally emerges is one you can absolutely trust.
You can gently open your eyes. That visualization is not just a cute mental trick. It is a profound reclaiming of your psychological sovereignty. You can return to that room at any moment of the day.
Let's just recap the journey we've taken today. We began by recognizing the overwhelming, silent takeover of influence creep. We explored the biological reality of emotional contagion, understanding that our ancient survival wiring makes us incredibly vulnerable to the manufactured panics of the digital age.
We looked at the astrology of July 2026, not to predict the future, but as a masterclass in how competing interpretations can hijack our agency. We learned that we must categorize all external advice as either a mirror for our inner world, whether to prepare for, a myth to find meaning in, but never ever a mandate that demands blind obedience.
We then built the architecture of your signal council. We defined the specific roles of the body for somatic data, evidence for grounded reality, the wise witness for clear reflection, and the future self to protect and build your self-efficacy.
And we gave you the practical tools, the influence audit to clear the room, the 24-hour interpretation rule to let the cortisol clear your nervous system, and whose voice is this? Check to sever parasitic thoughts. The core takeaway of session 139 is this. Your inner signal, your clarity, is not strengthened by listening to everyone. It is not strengthened by gathering more and more data from an endless parade of gurus. Your signal is strengthened by sacred selection.
Discernment is the act of consciously choosing who has earned the right to shape your reality.
So your direct call to action for this week is twofold. First, I want you to choose one voice to consciously and permanently remove from your inner council. It could be unfollowing that toxic account that constantly tells you the sky is falling. It could be setting a firm boundary with a fear-based relative. Evict them from the boardroom. Second, choose one grounded, expansive voice, a true wise witness, and consciously invite them in.
And as you move through this week, consider this final thought to mull over. Not every voice that loves you gets to lead you. And not every loud interpretation deserves a chair at your table. Look at the single biggest decision in your life right now and ask yourself honestly, who is actually casting the deciding vote?
Remember, if you are standing in your kitchen, completely paralyzed by the noise, it is not because you are broken. And it's not because you lack intuition. It is just because the waiting room is way too crowded. Clear the room, take a breath, and take your rightful seat at the head of the table.
And maybe, just maybe, skip the $40 mushroom powder unless your body and your evidence seat actually agree on it.
Lesson definitely learned on that one. We will see you all next week for session 140. Stay grounded, stay sovereign.
Amazing. Thank you, Jared. This has been such a powerful deep dive.
Thank you, Alicia. It's vital work.
Thanks for joining us on Vibrations and Manifestations. We'll see you next time.